Hello, everybody, and welcome in to the first edition of SEC Live. I am your host, Matthew Miller. With me is Tyler. Tyler, how are you doing tonight? And introduce yourself to the people out there.
Well, hey, guys, I'm doing pretty well. It's honest, kind of a bright Tuesday out here in Minnesota, but this is an SEC channel. I know I'm out here in the Big Ten country, but yeah, some of you may know me from the SG1 Sports YouTube channel. You either love me or hate me over there. That's how it is. But I'm excited to get this going here at the Voice of College Football.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. Obviously, Texas, a newcomer to the SEC, as well as Oklahoma, and we'll talk about them in their big game with Tennessee this week. Before we get started, guys, again, please hit that like and subscribe button. We're trying to grow the channel here, give you as much content as we possibly can, so that really helps out when you like and subscribe. It's free, so do it for us down there. And we are a quarter of the way through the season already, which is crazy to say, the regular season that is. Let's jump into our top 5 teams. We're each going to give you our top 5 teams in the SEC. I'm going to send it over to Tyler. Tyler, who is your 5th team right now in the SEC?
Well, believe it or not, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide. This is based on what I've seen thus far for the season. Alabama struggled a little bit with South Florida, bounced back against Wisconsin. I think the 4 other teams have looked slightly better or have a better non-conference win. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But Alabama, some concerns. You could maybe be real here. Wide receivers, pretty young. Ryan Williams having a great freshman campaign, though. Give him some credit, though. But he's your leading wide receiver. It's I would say that's kind of worrisome. And, that South Florida game opened a lot of eyes for some people. Now, South Florida could end up being a good Group 5 team. We could see them against Miami, but it's a Group 5 team. You should be able to push them around, and Alabama struggled there. That's why I kind of have them at number 5.
Yeah, even with the backup in the game in Fomby, I know he had I think there was 8 penalties called on him in that game.
That was ridiculous.
Yeah, you should still be able to push around USF. And honestly, for the second year in a row, they weren't able to do that for the majority of the game. They had to put in Elijah Pritchard back in the game, and they were able to move the ball then. But still, your second string tackle should be able to push around USF. For me, I do mine a little differently. So I'm going based off of a neutral field who I would take. I have Ole Miss at 5. I have them at 5 for one reason. I have yet to see Lane Kiffin win a big game at Ole Miss. His biggest win is at LSU. And no offense, I think LSU last year, you could do whatever you wanted to offensively versus that defense. It was atrocious, and we'll get into them later because I don't think it's much better. But I just need Lane Kiffin to win a big-time game before I put a lot of stock in Ole Miss. I know Jackson Dart and that offense is putting up crazy numbers, and the defense is playing well too. I saw a clip today on Twitter of Walter Nolan basically walking back multiple Wake Forest linemen. So the defensive line with Princely in there as well has been doing really good. But I just have them at number 5 for right now. Tyler, who is your 4th team?
Well, I actually have, if you know this, I'm a Georgia Bulldog fan. I have Georgia at number 4, unfortunately. Based on what I saw against Kentucky. Now, you could point against the Clemson game. Well, Georgia had, a couple, and throughout the seasons, we're going to hear a lot of this from Georgia fans. Well, Georgia was missing McLeod. They're missing Michael Williams against Kentucky. We have yet to see Warren Brinson. That's a big loss, too, a first stringer right there. But still, got pushed around against Kentucky, and let's just be real here. The offense was horrible. A lot of Georgia fans blaming Mike Bobo with the play calling. Arian Smith with a drop. Again, Georgia just looked out of sync against Kentucky. I don't really see a point to put Georgia in that top 3 of the teams that I've saw thus far. You'll see coming up here soon, but Georgia kind of has a lot of question marks there on the line of scrimmage. Losing Tate Ratledge is also huge. Of course, guy can't really stay healthy, which is unfortunate. He'll be out for a couple weeks again. Hopefully, Michael Williams can return for the Alabama game. We have yet to see Warren Brinson. That's a huge 2 players right there on the defensive line. But Georgia's offense scoring 13 points against a Kentucky team that just gave up 31 points to South Carolina. And I know a lot of weird instances happened in that Kentucky game for both games, the South Carolina game and the Georgia game. But still, Georgia was lucky to escape Kentucky for whatever reason, Georgia has struggled at Kentucky over the past couple of seasons, really under Kirby Smart since his first year, beating Kentucky on a last-second field goal with Hot Rod. But, yeah, I have to put Georgia right above Alabama because of that Clemson win. I think is huge. Clemson's a very good team. In fact, that might be the second or third best win in college football right now.
Yeah, I'm not as down on Georgia per se because I think overall, I guess this could be another outlier like a Missouri or an Auburn game, and that's kind of where I'm going with this. I think it is an outlier where hopefully this isn't something that persists down in the regular more throughout the regular season, especially in a couple weeks when they play Alabama, because if it does, I think Alabama ends up winning that game, but I'm just putting that right now as an outlier. So I don't have Georgia at number 4. Instead, my number 4 team is the team they will play in a couple weeks, and that is Alabama. My main concern with Alabama is the young secondary. I'm worried when they go up against a quarterback that is capable of picking them apart, they will get picked apart. So far, they have not faced anyone that is capable of doing that. Brown at USF is way more of a runner than he is a passer. Tyler Van Dyke goes out, and I'm going to be straight up honest. I don't think he would have been able to do it either. But Wisconsin's backup did start to get the rhythm later in the second half there and did pretty well versus that secondary. So that would worry me if I'm an Alabama fan. And right now I have him for it. Now I will say this. I think Jalen Milroe, you can see it in his passing game, has taken that next step in this Kalen DeBoer offense. He's become more accurate at all levels of the field instead of before he was basically one read guy who was inaccurate at the first and second level of the field, but then deep, he could hit you and was pretty successful and accurate with that. I think he's better on the first 2 levels, short and intermediate now. So I have Alabama at 4. But again, guys, I think in my opinion here, there's a tier of the first 4 teams and then a drop off to my team at number 5 in Ole Miss. Could be wrong on that, but that's just my opinion so far. Tyler, who is your 3rd team?
Team that you just said that wasn't in your top 4. I have the Ole Miss Rebels. Ole Miss, what has been missing for Ole Miss over the past couple of years has been that defense. Now, to be fair, in 2021, Ole Miss gave up in their last 6 games about, I think, 14 points per game. They played Baylor, gave up one. Did they give up one offensive? I think they gave up actually 2 offensive touchdowns in the game. Still lost because Matt Corral went out. And their backup just, he's at Illinois now, but didn't really play well. But Jackson Dart, in my opinion, is number 1 at Heisman list. He's going to do what he does every week. Go for, what do you have, 300 yards passing against 377 against Wake Forest, 2 TDs. Did have that bad interception. Who cares? That was his first of the season. He can add 40, 50 yards rushing as well. Ole Miss is going to do that he's going to do that about 9 or 10 times this season. Ole Miss has a really good defense. They've yet to give up a touchdown. You could tell me, well, the best team they played is Wake Forest. Well, Wake Forest is going to be a team that's going to be they're going to be scoring about 30 points per game. I understand that Wake Forest's offense isn't probably as good as what it has been. Hank Bachmeier is a decent quarterback at best. But, yeah, getting Walter Nolan, huge get for Lane Kiffin. That's a guy I really wanted Kirby Smart to go after. Let's be real here. The NIL difference was, I guess, a little bit bigger there. I also thought Oregon was going to get him, but he ends up at Ole Miss, and he's going to have a monster impact on this team. Defense is looking very, very good. We'll see what they could do against Georgia Southern, but who really cares? To be honest with you, Georgia Southern, they have a pretty solid offense for a group of 5 team, but still, I really like this Ole Miss offense. They're top 10, but this defense for Ole Miss, I believe they're going to be circling around that top 20 mark at the end of the season.
Yeah, I agree. It's a much improved defense. All those portal acquisitions, especially along the defensive line, it's much better than it has been in the past. It's probably the best defense Ole Miss has had in a pretty long time. Maybe Robert Kimdichie was the last time Ole Miss had a defense like this.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, that's about the last time I can think of. Number 3 for me is Georgia. So they had a couple shuffling in and out of offensive linemen because of injuries there in that Kentucky game. I think that caused them to score less points than they would have in that game. Also, like you brought up, the Michael Williams injury and Warren Brinson, that is going to hurt them on the defensive side as well. I think if they get healthy, they're fine. My only concern with Georgia is the lack of explosive playmakers at the wide receiver position, usually, or even tight end. You had Brock Bowers there and Ladd McConkey last year. And in the national championship years, you had someone like A.D. Mitchell who shined for Texas last year. So I need someone to step up. I don't know who that's going to be. Whether it's going to be David Bell, Oscar Delp, Humphreys, who transferred over from Vanderbilt. I do not know, but someone has to. And if they do step up, I think Georgia can be number one on this list. If they don't, they could slide for me even further. But right now, I'm going to give respect to this team. They've won 2 out of the last 3 national championships. A lot of people consider that or thought they probably could have or should have won it last year as well. Sorry, Michigan fans. But I had them at number 3 right now. I'm not going to get too panicked from what I've seen so far. So they are my number 3 team. Tyler, who's your number 2?
The Tennessee Vols. This is a good pick for right now. Number 1, you got to look at their schedule. Got to go on the road against UGA late in the season. They do play Alabama at home. Coming up this week, they play at Oklahoma, who we'll talk about this a little bit later. But this schedule is built for playoffs. And thus far, Tennessee, another kind of like Ole Miss. The question mark was going to be in that secondary and their defense. And, well, I mean, they played absolutely outstanding the first 3 weeks of football. They ran the score up against my Kent State Golden Flashes. What can you do about that? Kent State's the worst team in college football. It's not close. But anyways, that NC State game was a coming out party, and NC State didn't score an offensive touchdown. I believe they had a pick 6, something like that, late in the game. So, like, who really cares? They held NC State to, 200 total yards. NC State couldn't run the ball. Tennis and then Nico, obviously, I think he's solid. I don't think he's winning the Heisman like a lot of Tennessee fans do, but Dylan Sampson in this rush game is what makes Tennessee Tennessee. And as of right now, I think to me they're the clear number 2 in the SEC as of right now. First 3 weeks.
Yeah, so we're going to agree on the top 2. I have Tennessee at number 2 as well. They've been just impressive on both sides of the ball. I know the schedule's easy, but they passed the eye test as well. And Nico, from the first start, he passed the eye test. And you're right, Kent State. They lost to St. Francis of PA. So, yes, They are not a good football team.
That's a bad loss.
Yeah, a very bad loss. But like you said, Dylan Sampson is averaging 7.9 yards per carry and already has 9 touchdowns. So he's putting up video game numbers already through the season, averaging 3 touchdowns a game, basically. So, and then you have 4 guys over 100 yards receiving. So this offense is just super explosive. Nico's perfect for the Josh Heupel scheme. And then the defense has been good. And James Pierce hasn't done anything. I think James Pierce has 1 or 2 tackles on the season. So if he pops off, then we're talking about a team that could be number 1 in this conference. This is a team that I wanted to jump all in on, but I couldn't. I had him at 9-3 preseason. I wanted to put him at 11-1 or even 10-2, and I just said, no, hold back. I should have went full force because with this schedule, like you said, I think this team could definitely be playing in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. If they blow out Oklahoma this weekend, this ranking may change for me, and they may be my number 1 team for next week. But for now, they are number 2. Tyler, we both have number 1. Who is it for you?
For me, it's obvious, Texas. They haven't struggled at all, kind of similar to everyone in my top 3, Texas, Tennessee, and Ole Miss. And they went to the Big House and just beat the soul and life out of Michigan. Now, I don't think Michigan's going to be a good team this year, but at the same time, I actually thought that'd be a really close game, and Texas bullied them on the line of scrimmage. You could say, well, they haven't played a good offensive team, so we don't really know how good the defense is. You can watch Texas defense play, know that they're really, really good. Texas's line of scrimmage is bully. You guys are bullies. I know you're a Texas fan, so you bullied Michigan. You beat them at their own game. The weird thing is the second half of that game, I don't know what happened. I guess Sark just took the night off or whatever. You guys should have beaten Michigan by 50 points, if we're being completely honest here. But he kind of brushed that off and gave Michigan their little flowers there. Again, I don't think Michigan's a good team, but the way that Texas won that game was just huge. And, oh, by the way, it sucks that Quinn Ewers is hurt. He has an injury. I think he's going to be okay. But look what Arch Manning just came in and did. Okay, cool, it's UTSA. UTSA, however, has been a very consistent group of 5 team over the past couple of seasons. So I got to give Texas a lot of credit. I think they're the number 1 team in college football right now. They have yet to struggle. They look good at every position thus far.
Yeah, they've looked good thus far. And yeah, going to the Michigan game, I thought it was going to be closer than it was. I thought Michigan's defensive line was going to be able to hold up to. I think our offensive line's the best in the country. I said going into the game on the Michigan preview, I thought this was the best offensive line Michigan would have faced in the last 3 years. And I know they faced Washington, who won the Joe Moore Award, but there's the difference between that Washington offensive line and this Texas offensive line is Texas is just huge, and they're really good athletes as well. Washington did not have the size up front. So overall, I think Texas is my number one team for now. If Quinn Ewers was out longer, I'd probably drop him. I think he only misses this week. I think he comes back versus Mississippi State. And honestly, do we need him for Mississippi State? I don't think so. But I would like him to get some reps going into the bye week before we play Oklahoma. That is my main concern. But overall, yeah, I guess I want to see the secondary tested. It definitely, like you said, Tyler, just watching it, they're better than they were last year overall. Like I said, going into the season, I thought Texas at every position other than defensive tackle was better everywhere on the defensive side of the ball than those two positions. Because when you lose an Outland Trophy winner in Tavondre Sweat and you lose Byron Murphy, who's a first-round pick in the NFL, you're not going to be able to replace those. Georgia couldn't even do that when they lost Jordan Davis, so I didn't expect Texas to. But overall, this team has just gotten much better at almost every other position, including offensively, where I think they're deeper than they were last year. So they are my number one team for now. Let's jump into your comments because you have a bunch of them right now.
Once again, this has only been first 3 weeks of college football, so our lists are going to change.
Oh, 100%.
So,
100%.
I know a lot of people are probably going to be upset at it, but
let's see. Tony Montana just on one in here.
and that's Tony for you. Oh boy. He's a Kentucky fan. Tony's a Kentucky fan.
In 2021, Georgia beat Kentucky 16-6. They beat TCU in the national championship game by 60.
Well, that was 2022, but yeah, in 2021, Georgia beat Kentucky 38-7.
T-Wit for Gator says number 1 Texas, number 2 Georgia, number 3 Alabama, number 4 Tennessee, number 5 Ole Miss. Honestly, any order other than I think you have to I see I have my Texas stuff behind me, so it's hard not to call me a homer. I think Texas right now has to be number 1, but everything after that I don't have any issue with, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, those are your top 5 teams. Those are you're going to say Missouri. I don't see any. I'm glad there's no Missouri love yet. We'll talk about them later.
Tennessee, man, he's putting Texas at number 4.
That's an LSU guy.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you know this because I'm interested. Yeah, of course he's putting at Texas number 4. We'll get to them. We'll get to LSU. So, DeReal, thank you for tuning in, DeReal. Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Ole Miss. Okay. Now, honestly, Tyler, we're a little bit higher on Tennessee than most of the people. Other than Noah Long, he does have Tennessee number 1.
Well, you could say that out of the 5 teams, if you're looking to worry somewhere with Tennessee, is if they can't run the ball, can they throw? And that's kind of been Heupel's issue over the past couple of years when he's played Georgia, and pretty much Georgia shut his offense down. So.
Tony Montana. You said he was a Kentucky fan?
I was trolling. He's a Louisville fan. He's a Louisville fan. I like to give him a little bit because how Kentucky kind of owns him lately.
If the SEC sucks, then what is the ACC? A big pile of human garbage waste? Like, come on, man.
Well, I get it. I get in it with ACC fans because they think they're better than the Big 12. I don't.
They're
think
not.
The ACC
No.
is better than,
No, I don't either. We agree on that.
Get ready.
Tyler, get ready to shave that mustache. What was the apology?
Okay, so me and Tony have a bet based on Louisville. He has Louisville over 9.5 wins. I have them on the under. So
I don't know.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I don't know their schedule, but let's just put it this way: Tyler. I don't know if he's injured yet, Tyler Shuck, but he's always injured. So if he gets hurt, I have no clue who your backup is because he's going to get hurt. He's never been healthy ever.
Which sucks, but you got to remember they play at Kentucky. They always lose Kentucky. They play Notre Dame. That's a revenge game. And they also play Clemson. So to me, that's 3 easy losses right there. Yeah. Anyways.
Do they play Syracuse?
Yeah, I think they do play Syracuse. I think they also play Miami.
Oh, so. They're not winning. They're not
I
winning.
think.
No, not happening. You'll win that bet.
But that's
Louisville
tough.
lost to Jeremy Johnson. Never forget.
Oh, yeah. But to be fair, Petrino put in Lamar Jackson late in that game, and they came back to almost beat you, by the way, Andrew. But we'll forget about that.
Louisville
Still
plays
lost.
Miami. Yeah, Miami has one of the weaker schedules like I've ever seen. I tweeted this out after week 1. I think Miami will go to the playoff, and you'll literally have no idea how good they are. You have like no idea. Like you can watch them and tell they're a good football team, but you don't know if they can play with the big boys at all going through that schedule.
That's Mario Cristobal for you. He's one of those guys that's gonna win games based off his line of scrimmage.
Yeah,
and you can. A lot of college, I guess you could say, well, a lot of teams do that, but Oklahoma, I don't know about that one. Oregon's a finesse team too, so.
Yeah, we beat Miami at Miami. Yeah, but Miami's better too. Miami's much better, actually. I mean, the addition of Cam Ward is amazing because I think right now he's probably the 3rd best quarterback in college football.
I know, and he's going to have really high odds for the Heisman after what he did to Florida. And, oh, by the way, they don't play anyone until Virginia Tech on a Friday night. And is that next weekend or the week after? Might be the week after.
That's good.
No, it is actually next week.
Is this a Louisville hate video or the SEC channel? Well, you turn it into a Louisville hate video, so thank you for that. But no, we will go on to now what is being discussed across of college football, or the biggest discussion. Should Billy Napier be fired? Or the better question is, when will he be fired? So we'll get into that. Tyler, I will let you have the floor. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think me and you both know he is going to be fired. It's kind of when. I think it's after the UCF game. I'm hearing Florida fans saying it's win or lose against Mississippi State. I think it's, the defense on the Mississippi State is, well, we have a bye week so that we can get ready for the future, have an interim head coach, and then still be looking, whatever. They compare it to Jimbo Fisher. He was fired after he blew out Mississippi State, and I believe they had a bye week. I think you have to keep Billy Napier until basically the Georgia game, unless you have an ultimate letdown, which would be the UCF game, which is kind of where I think Florida's going to lose to Central Florida. Gus Malzahn is a weird coach. You saw what he did this past weekend. He went on the road, came back in a weird game, beat TCU. What's he going? He has a bye week. He's going to turn it around and probably lose to Colorado next week after a bye, and then boom, beat Florida 41-17. This is what Gus Malzahn does. He did it last year with the Oklahoma State game. Came out of nowhere the week before, lost to, I forgot, was it Iowa State? It was some random team they lost to by a lot. Turned it around, beat Oklahoma State 45-3. I see that kind of happening with the Florida game. I think Central Florida will beat Florida, and then Billy Napier will be fired on that Sunday, which is what, the October 4th or 5th or something like that? I think it's after the Central Florida game.
Yeah, that'd be October 6th. He would get fired. Yeah. Yeah. So I think honestly, if they lose this Mississippi State game, you have to fire him. Like you were playing, in my opinion. I said this going into the season. I didn't have him as the worst team. I put Vanderbilt. I should have had him as the worst team because in everything I was looking at, I believe Mississippi State, talent-wise, has the worst roster in the SEC.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even think it's close. I feel bad for Blake Shapen because he's actually playing pretty well, and I think he probably should have transferred somewhere else if somewhere else was available. Hell, if Michigan had Blake Shapen, they might actually be pretty decent because he's playing pretty good football right now. But everywhere else on this roster is just in shambles. I'm going to be in the minority here. I didn't like the hire of Jeff Lebby. I never liked it. And I think I do think there's a chance, with that up-tempo offense, the confidence and effort I've seen Florida play with. And I think Billy Napier's been over his shoes here with this job for a while now. I mean, watching that Utah game last year, that game reminded me so much of Tom Herman at Texas. If anyone watched Tom Herman at Texas, it was illegal procedure penalties, boneheaded penalties. And that's what you see with bad coached football teams. And that's what you've seen with Florida. Bad penalties, stupid mistakes, and it just continues. I haven't seen it get any better. And the funny thing is, Tom Herman at Texas had the P chart. Everyone saw that. Everyone made fun of that. And then you have with Florida and Billy Napier, like, pull your socks up. Wear these types of socks. He concentrates on all this stupid stuff, but he can't win football games. And I think he's gone, or he will be gone. It's just a matter of if or when, I should say. I think if he loses this game, he'll be gone after this week during the bye week. If he doesn't, I agree with you. I think even if they lose the UCF game, I think he survives that. I think he probably makes it to the next bye week before Georgia. But he's going to get fired during one of the bye weeks. Or the other scenario here is if Tennessee absolutely blows the doors off of him, I could see them firing them after that game, because then they go and play Kentucky. And guys, Tyler, I'll let you guess this. When is the last time Florida had 3 losing seasons in a row? I'll let the chat try to guess that. Tyler, you can have a guess at it.
I believe it's definitely before the 1990s, because that's when Florida football kind of started to kick off there with Spurrier. Was it 1971 through 74?
1945, 46, and 47. That is the last time Florida has had 3 losing seasons in a row. 3 losing seasons in a row. Billy Napier, congratulations. You just accomplished some history at Florida, because if you stick around, well, even if you don't, you're going to get credited with it. You will have 3 losing seasons in a row at the University of Florida. He has completely demolished this football program. It isn't anywhere near what it used to be. Hell, it's not. Will Muschamp did a better job than Billy Napier.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah. And Will Muschamp, a great defensive mind, great defensive coordinator, analyst still at Georgia.
Yep.
Not a good coach, not a good head coach, and Billy Napier isn't a good head coach either. Dan Mullen had a 6-7 record. They fired him for that. The best record Billy Napier will ever have is 6-7. He should be long gone. Now, Tyler sent me something pretty interesting. They just came out with a couple candidates or odds for candidates for the next Florida job. We can run through that list real quick. We have Jamie Chadwell plus 400, Lane Kiffin plus 500, Deion Sanders, which you're throwing your money away if you're betting on that, plus 600, Eli Drinkowitz plus 700, Brent Key plus 800, Brian Schottenheimer plus 900, Glenn Schumann 12-1, Chris Kleiman 12-1, Matt Rule 14-1, Josh Heupel 14-1, Brent Venables 14-1. Tyler, out of that list, who is your most likely candidate to take over at the University of Florida?
Well, I hate to be like this for Florida fans, and I get in arguments all the time with Florida. I'm telling you, it's not going to be Lane Kiffin. Here's why. He'll be in the playoffs this year. Unless Florida has to hope that they go 9-3, miss out on the playoffs, because the signing day period is, I think, 2 weeks before the first playoff game. And then the transfer portal it opens on a weird time. This is going to be a first year. So you're going to, if you hire Lane Kiffin, you're going to probably set yourself back. So I like Drinkwitz out of Missouri. I don't think Missouri's going to make it to the playoffs. I love what he's done for Missouri and kind of where that projection is heading. Missouri was, when they came to the SEC, the first year they went 5-7, but then Pinkel somehow, some way won the East, lost a weird game to Auburn. Year later with Matty Mock, they lost to Indiana, then Georgia by 100 points, but still won the East. And they never really recovered after that, but Eli Drinkwitz has come in and had some really good seasons for Missouri. Now you could say, well, he only had one good season because they won 11 games last year. But even the year that they went 6-7, they were actually expected to go 4-8. But anyway, I think he's doing a really good job for Missouri. I think he's a very good head coach, and in my opinion, that'd be an A- hire. That's who I would say number one is. And then after that, listen, I don't know. Jamie Chadwell. That is a tough pill to swallow if that is Florida's next head coach. It's my opinion, similar to Billy Napier. I would say he's slightly better. He's more of a proven winner because what he did at Coastal Carolina in that transitional season and in 2020, really, when he started to blow up. Then last year took over for Hugh Freeze. That would be a tough pill to swallow for Florida if they do hire Chadway. from Chadwell
Liberty.
from Liberty
Yeah.
/ Coastal Carolina. So I would go with Drinkwitz. My opinion.
Yeah, I agree that would be a horrendous hire. First off, because Liberty, if no one knows, they play in one of the worst conferences in America. I think they had the worst strength of schedule last year. I think they're going to have it again this year. To me, what you're doing there means legitimately nothing. Like, you could take a high school teacher with the talent they have and the money they spend on the football program, and he could put up good teams there because they actually invest in the program, whereas no one else in that conference does. Eli Drinkowitz would be interesting. To me, someone said it already. I think Jedd Fisch. This has been floated out there for the longest time. Jedd Fisch coming back to Florida, and I think he'd be a great hire. You'd finally get someone. Billy Napier is supposed to know offense. Jedd Fisch does know offense. Jedd Fisch puts out good offenses year after year. If anyone doesn't remember, Jim Harbaugh actually had Jedd Fisch on staff with him early on at Michigan as a passing game coordinator, I believe, and they did pretty well when he was there. So overall, I think it would be a great hire. I also think it would help someone with Lagway if you're able to keep him. And that's another reason to fire Billy Napier sooner rather than later. Try to keep the players on your team instead of entering the transfer portal or leaving eventually. And then also get better in recruiting. The recruiting is suffering right now. It's like 22nd in the country, according to 247. So it's not good enough. It's nowhere near the Florida standard. To me, Florida should be pulling in top 10 classes every year. So I would personally go with Jedd Fisch. If he is not available and he is not interested, SG1 Sports said something funny. He said, Urban Meyer, that's not going to happen. That'd be a hell of a hire. It's not going to happen. But there's this guy, and I have a man crush on him. I've said it on the Texas channel. I had Penn State winning the Big Ten because of this guy, because of this offensive guy, Andy Kotelnicki. I freaking love him. I don't know how he's going to be as a head coach, but let me tell you, you would be very competent on offense. That I can assure you. You've seen the difference with Kansas not having him. Kansas is nowhere near as good on offense as they were with him. So to me, that's a guy I would look into. He's not even on this list, but Jedd Fisch would be my number one pick. And then I would kick the tires on Andy Kotelnicki up in Penn State if he's willing to come.
I would say if you want to go the Penn State route, James Franklin is still a solid option. I know that a lot of people don't like him because he doesn't beat Ohio State, who's a top 5 team, and Michigan, who was a top 5 team. But before Michigan was a top 5 team, he was beating Michigan. He hasn't been able to get over that hump. He won the Big Ten kind of on a fluke season, for being honest here. They lost to Pitt early on in the season, and I think they actually lost to Michigan by 100 or something like that in that 2016 season, then went on a real good run. But he hasn't yet to replicate that, and I actually like James Franklin. I know a lot of people don't. I know the Florida fan over here saying Jedd Fisch leaving Arizona ended that possibility. I actually don't think so. I think he would definitely leave Washington for Florida if he had the chance and if Florida gave him that call. Washington, they had an amazing run last year. I mean, in my opinion, it was kind of flukish. No offense, but they won 8 close games. Let's be real here. The roster turnover is ridiculous. It's going to be hard for him to build that up. Kind of like what it would be at Florida. However, the resources are much better at Florida than what they are at Washington. So I think he would actually jump the gun and head his way to Gainesville.
Yeah, Florida's like a top 12-ish job, whereas Washington is like, I don't know, 20th best job in the country.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. And I was being kind. And they, like you said, way more resources. I do think he would definitely leave for Florida. And I think it'd be a pretty good hire. And yeah, I agree with you. I don't think James Franklin's a bad coach at all. I think there's this perception because he can't beat Ohio State and Michigan, who do have better talent than him most years, that makes him all of a sudden a bad coach. Go look what he did at Vanderbilt. It's just like Greg Schiano, what he did at Rutgers. Those two guys can coach. James Franklin would be an interesting hire because honestly, I think Penn State is kind of the Florida of the Big Ten. I kind of think of them as the same type of program, honestly. So it'd be kind of interesting. I feel like that would be, is that a lateral move? I feel like that's kind of a lateral move.
Well, that's if he can't get over the hump this year. Now, I'm a believer in Penn State after I saw them against West Virginia. I know they struggled against Bowling Green, but I would actually love the hire. I think James Franklin is an exceptional head coach. He started rough at Penn State, but let's be for real here. I mean, look what happened. But he's been incredibly consistent. And, oh, by the way, he's won the Big Ten. I know it was 100 years ago, it feels like. But he's so consistent. He wins 10 games every single year. That's what Florida kind of needs. They need a coach that's been very consistent, who's proven it at the Power 5 level, who has a lot of experience. Maybe he hasn't jumped the gun yet, but maybe at Florida he's finally able to do it. That's my opinion. I would go with James Franklin as well, but I think Drinkwitz would be my number one choice after Lane Kiffin. I don't see you getting Lane Kiffin if they make it to the playoffs.
Okay. DeReal sent this in. I thought it was pretty interesting. Can an 8-4 SEC make the playoffs?
No.
The only 8-4 team that could have made the playoffs, it's not going to happen, would have been Florida with their schedule. Then that's not happening. Yeah. So I'm saying that's what I'm saying. There was an outside possibility, but that's the only one that I can even think of. There's no other team that would have been able to do it, and obviously that's not going to happen for Florida. So there's not even a possibility. No, there's just first off, how many SEC teams would you put in then? Because I think you're going to have Texas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Georgia all better than 8-4, obviously. And they're probably going to be in. So it's like, what are you going to put in, 8 SEC teams or something like that?
Yeah, that's almost impossible. We would have to have a 2007 type year, but way more upsets if an 8-4 team makes it. I'm sorry, I don't see that happening.
You can back it up with evidence. What evidence? We've never had a 12-team playoff. There's no evidence of it.
Maybe that's responding to something else. I'm not sure, but yeah. When was the last time an 8-4 team finished top 10? Maybe Florida in 2020. I mean, but that doesn't really. Does that count? Does that really count? Florida in 2020? Oh, maybe they finished 11 or 12. I don't know if that counts because that's a weird year.
7 SEC teams.
That's not possible.
Yeah,
it's not possible.
No, because you're gonna have the 2 Big Ten teams get in minimum, and then let's say hypothetically you got 7 SEC. Well, and no, yeah, it's literally not possible.
Yeah. Well, I think at least you'll get 3 because LSU lost to USC, and if you look at USC's schedule, if USC goes into the Big House and wins, they should regardless go 10-2, and that's probably good enough to get you to the playoffs. But anyways, you're going to get 3 Big Ten teams at least. You're probably getting 3 at least from the SEC. So that 7 is just ridiculous. I'm sorry.
7. He says 2 plus 7 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. That's just not going to happen.
Kentucky math. Oh, man.
That's funny.
Well, I mean, 1 group of 5, 1 ACC. That's potential. I think there'll be 2 actually Big 12 teams, Utah and maybe Kansas State / Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
So no, 7's ridiculous. There's not even, is there 17? Well, there's 6 teams in the top 10 right now, but let's be real here.
But also the ACC, like if Clemson runs the table and gets to the ACC championship game, and Miami runs the table and gets to the ACC championship game, and Clemson beats Miami, they're both getting in.
Yeah.
So that there's no chance. I think the most you'll ever see from one conference, you could possibly, in the perfect scenario, see 6. That'd be like the absolute most I could see. But I don't think that's happening this year. I think the SEC will probably get 5, maybe 5.
Yeah, and the SEC kind of choked with some of their marquee matchups. LSU, USC, Texas A&M, Notre Dame. Both those teams probably should have won those games if we were to get in a situation like that. Who cares about Mississippi State? Arkansas also kind of ruined it for Oklahoma State because Oklahoma State's going to end up at least 9-3. They'll have a shot too with the conference title. So yeah, the SEC kind of choked that. If they were to win more of those marquee matchups, I think they went 9-6 in the Power 5 matchups. I think that's actually number 1. If LSU wins, they'll be 10-6. But any out of all the Power 4 conferences, but you kind of choked it there, in my opinion. But
yeah, I agree. They had to perform better in those big games. They kind of did the same thing last year. They didn't perform as well. If they lived up to the older standard like 4 or 5 years ago, they could have.
Yeah, last 3 years, the SEC's kind of laid an egg with non-conference, to be honest. But
Yeah, these SEC folks aren't going to like us saying that, but
and we're SEC homers, but we're also trying to keep it real here. 7 is just ridiculous. I mean, who would be that 7th team? Like, I guess you could say Georgia.
Texas A&M at 8-4.
Yeah, I mean, like, who would be that 7th team? LSU, but they already lost to USC. So that's, to me, that's impossible. He's only naming 6. Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, Ole Miss, Missouri, and Alabama all won their key matchups out of their conference. Boston, are we for real? Boston College? Boston College is probably a 6-win team. Ole Miss beat Wake Forest, who's 5-7 maybe. Tennessee beat NC State, who's overrated. Could probably say the same thing about Michigan. Wisconsin lost their quarterback. So I guess Georgia's is probably the best. Well, Georgia's is the best out of the group. Unless Michigan goes ahead and beats the USC. But come on. Wake Forest, Boston College. Let's be for real here.
Yeah, I'm a little bit higher on Boston College than you. I think they're like an 8-4 team, but I completely agree. Like overall, that's still not a great win. I'm only saying 8-4 because they're in the ACC.
Yeah,
so it's not a great win. So let's get into some previews for this week. Let's start out with Florida, who is actually favored in this game on the road versus Mississippi State by 6 points. The over/under here is 58.5. This is a big game for these teams because there's not many wins left on either of these schedules. Tyler, what are you thinking about this game?
Well, I know that Florida opened up this up. They were 4.5-point favorites. So a lot of people are jumping the gun here on Florida because they watched Mississippi State lose to Toledo, which is a pathetic, terrible home loss, 41-17. It's not like you lost, 27-24. And if you watch the Arizona State game for Mississippi State, they were down 20 points almost the entire game until the fourth quarter. Mississippi State is a very bad team. You could say the same with Florida, but Florida has not looked as bad as Mississippi State. Florida has the better defense. Mississippi State, their weakest point, they have a lot of weak points, to be real here, but their defense is god-awful. Giving up how many yards rushing to Toledo, how many yards rushing to Mississippi State. If Florida can go in there and run the football, which is kind of what I think they'll do, they should win this game pretty comfortably. I don't care where it's played. I believe not like this matter, but I believe Dave Patch is on the call for this. I like hearing his voice and this is on ESPN as well. Again, not like that really matters for the prediction, but I like Florida. I would take those 6 points. Now, I would have liked 4.5, a little bit more than 6, but a lot of people are riding Florida. Florida has to win this game. There's just both teams have to, but I think Florida more, especially Billy Napier. If he's unable to win this game, yeah, he's gone. Like for real, he's seriously gone. But Mississippi State is the worst team in the SEC. I wouldn't say Florida is. There's a mismatch here with talent as well. You're talking about a Florida roster who, at worst, if you base off recruiting as well, it's probably in the high teens. I believe that's where Florida is.
Yeah, they're 12th.
So they're 12. But even if you add in what we've seen on the field, they're probably in the high teens based off a roster. Mississippi State's in the 50s. I'm being dead serious. I would take Florida. I think they'll get in the 30s. Maybe Mississippi State gets in the 20s. Maybe a late TD there. I like Florida. Give me the 6.
Yeah, so this is one of those games. I think it's going to be super high scoring, bad tackling, bad fundamentals, but it's going to be one of those games you turn on and it's fun to watch because let's face it, both these teams are putrid on both sides of the ball. They really are. So I think this is a high scoring game. If I'm betting on this, I'm not going to bet on this game, but 58.5, I'm slamming it. If there's an alternate line, I'm pushing that thing up to 60 and I'm going over.
Dang.
I think DJ Lagway, if they're smart, but again, it's Florida. I'm talking Billy Napier. They're probably not. Should be playing in this game and should be getting the majority of the snaps because this will give him confidence. And to me right now, that's the best thing you can give him because you're not going to give him wins. And I think confidence is the number one thing you got to give him. I mean, just looking at this, I wrote some stats down. Like Florida on the offensive side of the ball, guys, is 94th in the country in points per game. That's god awful. And Mississippi State's not much better. They're 87th. So, and then defensively, Florida's in the 112s points per game and yards per game allowed is 121 or 121. So they're bad. Defense for Mississippi State, 106 points per game or 106th in points per game allowed and 100th in yards per game allowed. I mean, they're just abysmal. Both of these teams on both sides of the ball. I can't believe I'm going to do this. I'm going to take Mississippi State.
Oh,
I think I don't like Jeff Lebby. I've said that. I already said that on the show. But I think, sadly, he's more competent than Billy Napier. And I'm going with the more competent coach, and I'm going with the more competent quarterback in Blake Shapen, because I don't think they're going to play DJ Lagaway, and that goes into Billy Napier being a bad football coach and why he will get fired. So I'm going to take Mississippi State to win this game 37-30. That's what I believe it's going to be, 37-30. Tyler, did you give a score prediction for it?
I do want to say this. I'll give Florida a little bit of leeway here because they played A&M and Miami. Miami's a top 10 team. A&M's, I would say, borderline top 25. Mississippi State played freaking Toledo, and you could say Arizona State's borderline top 25, but that roster is nowhere near as Texas A&M or Miami. But I'm going to take Florida 31-21. I would actually lean towards the under, even though Mississippi State's defense is terrible. So we're both contrasting differences here.
Yeah, hey, that works. So we can either be 1-1 versus each other or 0-2. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I will watch this game, obviously, for the SEC channel, but also because I would want to watch this game. Like, I really think it's going to be a fun game to watch, because I think, again, when you get two teams that are just bad at the fundamentals of football, you're going to get a lot of points. You're going to have a lot of fun watching it, because you're going to go up and down the field. That's what I think is going to happen. Now, that's the one possibility I think could happen. I also could think they're just so bad they don't score at all. So it's going to be one or the other. I don't think you're going to see like 21 or 24-20 or something like that. I think it's going to be like 13-10 or 37-30. That's my opinion on that game. We're on opposite sides of that. That is the first game we're jumping into. The next game we're jumping into should be a bloodbath. UCLA is getting 24.5 points going down to Baton Rouge. I remember the last time these teams played. UCLA beat LSU in the Rose Bowl with Ed Orgeron going through the tunnel saying, "Get that soft pussy color out of here." And then that soft pussy color beat them up pretty bad in the Rose Bowl. So that was hilarious. Yeah, that was hilarious. And by the way, UCLA might have the best uniforms in the sport. So that was a bad take from the beginning for Ed Orgeron. But how do you think this game plays out, Tyler?
Well, if we've been watching both these teams, they both look pretty bad. Let's just be real here. LSU has yet to play a full game at their potential. I would say LSU should be either 3-0 or 1-2. They kind of outplayed USC for most of that game, found a way to lose, and then kind of got outplayed by South Carolina for most of that game and found a way to win. So I guess 2-1's about right. I would say they should have beat USC, but then lost to South Carolina. But anyways, they're 2-1 on the season. I think this is where LSU plays their best game. This is where LSU finds their identity. Nuss has played really well, Nussmeier, and the Nuss bus. Ride the Nuss bus. I've been riding the Nuss bus all offseason. I thought this team had potential to be in Atlanta, believe it or not. Harold Perkins in fact, he might be the second best SEC player behind Pierce at Tennessee. In the SEC. UCLA, on the contrast, what just happened in the Rose Bowl? You had a bye week after an embarrassment at Hawaii. Okay, you played on the road to a Mountain West team and a Hawaii team that's weird. They almost beat Vandy last year. They've beaten Arizona at home in the past with Cole McDonald and Chavin Corderno both share. That was a weird game back in 2019. But you had a bye week. Indiana they just had another game. I think they played, Western Illinois, who cared. You lose that game by 29 points at home in the Rose Bowl. Ethan Garbers played absolutely terrible. They got pushed around. Indiana looked like the much better team at every segment of the line of scrimmage, skill set. The Bay had a better coach. I mean, this is a mismatch, in my opinion. 24.5 points is a lot for LSU to lay, but I'm all over it. I think LSU finally shows out in their fourth game. They kind of have to, because if they don't, this could be a devastating season for Brian Kelly. But I'm going to ride the Nuss bus, and I'm going to take LSU, lay the 24.5. I think they win this one 45-10, something like that. UCLA's that bad of a team, and I want to see LSU succeed.
Yeah, so I wasn't as high on LSU coming into this season because I didn't think they got their defense fixed, and the stats back that up. Like they're still 87th in points against on defense, and they're still in the 110 to 120 range on passing yards allowed per attempt. So they're still really bad on defense. This is basically the same LSU team, just minus Jaden Daniels and the wide receivers. Though the wide receivers they have now are still good. They have 4 guys over 100 yards receiving. So still very good on offense. I agree with you. I think they absolutely kicked the crap out of UCLA. UCLA is really bad, guys. Like this is one of the teams I took the over under on team total wise, wins wise. I think they were set at 5. I took the under. I was praying they lost to Hawaii. They should have. Ethan Garbers, just go watch his interception in the game versus Hawaii. It's one of the worst interceptions you'll ever see. And so far this year, he has 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions. So you'll see more interceptions in this game. Also, what is not good, he is their leading rusher at UCLA. You never want your quarterback to be your leading rusher, especially if he's not a dynamic athlete. And Ethan Garbers is not a dynamic athlete. He's not Lamar Jackson back there. So that's really bad. Yeah, they're bad, like tremendously bad. They're probably the worst or second worst team in the Big Ten. Like that's how bad this team is. Yeah, it is. It is crazy. They've fallen off a cliff. And my only concern into this game would have been if LSU beat the crap out of South Carolina this week, I would probably take UCLA in this spot. But I think LSU comes out and is going to cover this because they want to show people like that was a fluke. This is who we really are, even though I think that's who they really are playing South Carolina, because South Carolina, in my opinion, is a decent team. UCLA is dreadful. So we agree on this one, Tyler. I'm going to take LSU to cover this 24.5. It's a massive number. I'm going to hate if this is a backdoor cover at the end, but I'm going to take LSU 40-10. So we're pretty much in the same ballpark there. The over-under on this game is 56.5. So we would both be going under there as well. So we agree on this game completely, unlike the last game. So LSU rolls there, gets a little bit back on track. We'll jump into your comments and questions before we get into Arkansas and Auburn.
Yeah, which is crazy with UCLA. They had a top 20 defense last year and a really good rush offense, and those are the two things that they're struggling at. Deshaun Foster, who I loved him because he was a Carolina Panther, and he had a couple good runs for Carolina, but was always their second string back. But anyway, I mean, he's just done a horrible job thus far. So I like LSU big.
Yeah, it started off bad at the Big Ten press conferences and only gotten worse.
I feel bad.
Yeah, it's bad. I was shocked I don't know how much they paid for him, but the defensive tackle, I forget his name, Toya or something like that. Jay Toya, I think that's his name. Texas was heavy in on him, and he went back to UCLA. My God, brother, why? How much money did they offer you? Because this team's bad. And then keep Lamar out of your mouth, Texas man. Hey, I said nothing but positive things. I like Lamar Jackson. You have a Manning. You don't need Lamar. I never said I needed Lamar, but he was fun to watch, and he's a hell of a player. Yeah, I don't know what he's saying.
Tony.
Noah Long, this is not the same LSU defense. Noah, my God. Go to teamrankings.com. The stats are free. You can look them up. They are basically the same as they were last year. They have put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. That's what this is. I like Blake Baker. I like Bo Davis. They will get this fixed. They're very good coaches. But it doesn't happen overnight. One, because the talent isn't as high as it used to be on LSU's defense. It's not. It's nowhere near. That defensive line isn't any good with the talent you have. The secondary is young. And then Harold Perkins is really the only guy that's like, wow, that guy can scare me on that side of the ball for them. So listen, guys, they're not good on defense. I'm sorry is he an LSU fan?
Yeah,
he is. Okay. So I know where you're coming from, but they're not that good on defense. They probably won't be really good on defense for another 2 years. I don't even think they'll be really good next year. They'll be better, but they're not going to be really good for a couple.
I actually think they'll be better towards the end of the season. And this game they'll show out because they're playing a terrible offensive team who just can't get out of their own way.
If Ethan Garbers puts up like good stats versus you, that's all you're going to need to know, because that's going to be. I mean, I'm trying to think of their schedule, and he's probably the worst quarterback you'll face all year. I mean, he's really bad. I'm trying to think who else it could be at this point.
He might be actually.
Yeah. So if he puts up 9 point whatever yards per pass attempt that you're allowing to everyone else, you're in for a long season in the SEC. So let's see. Do you have an Arch Manning jersey? Absolutely not. I own one jersey, and is a Vince Young Rose Bowl jersey.
Tony's a troll, so.
I
But
know.
I love Tony. He's funny. He's so
He is
funny.
funny. He's
We're all in a group
freaking
chat.
fast on the keyboard. Okay, so the next
Ooh.
game in the SEC, I think this is going to be the second best game in the SEC of the week, in my opinion. Arkansas is getting 3.5 points on the road in Jordan-Hare versus Auburn. Arkansas should be 3-0. They really should be. They played much better in that Oklahoma State game. They did everything they possibly could to lose that football game. Literally everything. The over-under here is 58 points. Tyler, what say you on this game?
Well, the key for both teams is going to be quarterback play. Both these I'll tell you this much. Hank Brown, I don't know enough about him. He played the worst defense I've ever seen in my life in New Mexico, and I'm not kidding. This is a New Mexico defense that gave up 400 yards rushing to Montana State, and I don't care that Montana State is one of the best FCS teams in college football. They're FCS for a reason, and then they gave up 100 points to Arizona. Okay, great. They have McMillan, who's probably the best wide receiver, but still – New Mexico is the worst defense I've ever seen in my life. They have the worst defense ever. You want to talk about bad defense? Fine. Auburn, that's kind of what they needed to go into this game against. They kind of needed that, motivational win, I guess, for a team like Arkansas who can score. And Taylor Green has not really been an efficient passer. He's been able to make some big plays, but also on the alternative, he's been turning the ball over for these past 2 games a little bit too much. And in that Oklahoma State game, you're right, they should be 3-0. They did everything. This is Sam Pittman for you, and this is unfortunately he's coaching for his tenure at Arkansas to continue. If he doesn't make a bowl game this year, he's gone. And this is kind of a situation in which this is a pick'em game. But I like Taylor Green a little bit more. I think he's more explosive. I actually like this rush game for Arkansas. I believe they're top 10 in the country in rushing yards. In fact, they might be number 1 in rushing yards per game. They've been averaging a freak 300 yards rushing per game. They had over 300 yards against Oklahoma State, who doesn't really have a good defense. I get it. But still, that's a Power 5 team in the top 15. And they pretty much shut down Ollie Gordon. It's just a terrible way to lose. Last week, they played really bad against UAB. They were down double digits, but they found themselves late into that game. Andrew Armstrong's a very solid wide receiver. They also have Jaquin Jackson, who's one of the best running backs in college football. Definitely probably the most underrated. I like Arkansas here, but I do believe Arkansas is going to give up some points, and that will benefit Auburn in the longer run. But I still want to go Arkansas here. Give me those 3.5, and I'll actually take them on the money line. I think Arkansas goes into Jordan-Hare and upsets Auburn, giving them their second loss of the year and at home in a 31-27 game. I trust Taylor Green just a little bit more on the road.
Yeah, I've actually been pretty impressed from what I've seen with Taylor Green, other than, like you said, the turnovers. But I think I had him as the 12th or 13th best quarterback entering the season in the SEC. I underrated him. I think he's a little bit better than that. And then, yeah, like you said, Jaquin Jackson, us Texas fans know him. We recruited him out of Duncanville as a quarterback. And just like Roschon Johnson, he turned into a running back, and he's going to play in the NFL as a running back. He's averaging 8.4 yards per carry and has 6 touchdowns. He's doing a phenomenal job. Bobby Petrino, I mean, he's a great offensive play caller and potentially could be the next head coach at Arkansas again. Andrew Armstrong has over 300 yards receiving. So they definitely have explosive playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. Again, the questions comes on the defense. They lost a couple linebackers in the portal, and they really didn't seem to fill that very well. And so far through the season, that's kind of hurt them. And then on the other side of the ball, like you said, you brought in Hank Brown. I think it was very smart for Hugh Freeze to put in Hank Brown for the New Mexico game, because that allows him to build confidence, get his first play experience versus a team that's not very good, instead of throwing him into this game. Because let's be honest here, Peyton Thorne was not the answer. Peyton Thorne has not been the answer since he stepped foot on Auburn's campus. There's so many people that have cashed checks because of Kenneth Walker from that Michigan State team. Mel Tucker got to cash some checks. He may not cash anymore because of the lawsuit and everything going on there. And then Peyton Thorne, my God, brother, you've made a lot of money off Kenneth Walker as well. So send him a thank you, please. Auburn should have went out and got a quarterback. They didn't. Let's see if Hank Brown can fix it for at least this year. And maybe he's the quarterback of the future. I don't know. But they do have playmakers. I mean, Perry Thompson, Cam Coleman, Keandre Lambert-Smith are a good trio at wide receiver. And then you have Jarquez Hunter, who I ranked as like a top 3 or 4 running back in the SEC coming into this season, has been good so far this season as well, just like he was last year. I honestly just think it comes down to whatever defense can get that timely turnover or timely stop on third down. Oh man, this is a hard game for me. I'm gonna go the opposite of you. I'm going to take Auburn. I mean, it's a coin flip game. It would not shock me if Arkansas wins this game at all. I'm going to take Auburn to cover the spread. I'm going to have them winning this game 27-23, so barely covering. And I would take the under on this game at 58. 58 seems pretty high.
Yeah, you want to know something kind of crazy with Arkansas? They're like 1-9 in their last 10 games that are decided by 7 points or fewer. I believe they're 1-9. They might be 1-10 in the past 11. Their only win was to Florida last year on the road in Gainesville after Florida's beat down of they got beat down by UGA. But Sam Pittman needs to win a close game. He got screwed over by he screwed him. I guess he screwed themselves over against Oklahoma State. But that's a game they should have won. They outgained Oklahoma State by 300 yards. How do you lose? I'm still that's the most confusing loss I've seen maybe ever in college football, how they lost to Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State kind of wanted them to win anyways with the missed field goal and the terrible time of possession as well. It was just crazy. So, but I think Sam Pittman finally gets it done. And if he doesn't, if Auburn wins this game, it's going to be because of Sam Pittman. He made a coaching error yet again, and they'll fall to like 1-10, 1-11 in these one possessional games.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of the same situation as Billy Napier. Like, this guy showed you who he is as a coach. I don't know why they continue to hold on to him. I think he should be fired after this year unless somehow they go like 8-4, 9-3. But anything, if they go 7-5, 6-6, they should let him go, in my opinion. But what was your score for this game, Tyler, did you say?
I had Arkansas 31-27. I don't really believe in Hank Brown yet. I kind of have to see it to believe it. I know Arkansas's defense isn't the greatest, but at the same alternative, Auburn actually has a pretty good defense. So I guess it would be kind of a dumb, boneheaded pick to take Arkansas. But it's the SEC. This is Sam Pittman. He gets you out of your comfort zone. And Auburn had, 6 turnovers against Cal. And they somehow only gave up 21 points. Maybe Cal's just really bad offensively, and that's kind of the case. This is the best offensive team Auburn has played up to this point. And even last week, they struggled a little bit with New Mexico. They were able to score 20 points on them. I think Arkansas is able to push at least 27. That's what I'm going to take, Arkansas, 31-27.
Okay, and you wouldn't even take the over-under there because it'd be exactly what it is, 58.
Oh,
there's no half. Push. Yeah.
I haven't looked at the over-unders for any of these, so hey, I guess I'm right on a push right there.
Yeah, you are exactly on a push. It's weird to see an over-under that doesn't have a half point, so that's really weird. That usually doesn't happen. Let's jump into some of these comments, and then we'll get to Vanderbilt in Missouri.
Oh, boy. Big one.
I came here for Tyler and stayed for Texas Man and commented for SG.
I don't know if that's necessarily a compliment for me. I feel like that's more for you and SG1, so. Congrats, guys. That's Tony for you. He's an A1 troll. Get ready.
Texas Man knows ball, mustache man does not.
That's an Auburn fan, so.
Okay. That would make sense.
I understand that. I know SG1's in here, too.
He didn't know ball, or he don't know ball.
Yeah, Auburn fan, too. Unfortunate, man.
Yeah, that is unfortunate.
But on the alternative, it's actually hard to see Auburn lose their two, I guess, first two Power 4 conference games, games just at home. They lost to Cal. It's kind of hard to see them losing to Arkansas, but I think they actually will. I'm not sold on Auburn this year.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like I said, a coin flip game to where I think this kind of tells you where they're going, the trajectory for the rest of the season for both these teams, in my opinion, because they're very similar, honestly. So. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Arkansas wins this game at all. Why isn't this monetized? It is monetized.
It might not be.
I mean, I monetized it.
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
It's just trolling. Vanderbilt is getting 21 points versus Missouri, who's coming off the win at Boston College. Vanderbilt loses their first game. They lost to Georgia Southern, correct? Or was that Georgia State?
Georgia State. It was a road game.
Georgia State. Yeah.
Weird game.
Yeah. Diego Pavia has been doing his thing for Vanderbilt. What do you think about this game, Tyler?
Well, I'm going to say this about Vandy. Every year under Clark Lee, they start out really good. They start out 2-0, I believe, except for his first year, which was, 2020? Actually, no, it wasn't. It was 2021. But that was his first year. But 2022, 2023, and now this year, they start out 2-0. And then the third game, Vanderbilt curse strikes yet again. I really feel terrible for Vandy. They were down this entire game against Georgia State, though. They had a random safety that kind of actually was, you could point to, a deciding factor back in the second quarter. I watched this game. I turned it off when it's 29-17 with 6 minutes left. Vandy got the ball back. And next thing you know, on my ESPN app, Vanderbilt scores to make it 32-29 with a minute and 2 seconds left. I'm like, what? So I jump back, watch the game again, and then Georgia State just goes down in 5 plays, scores a very quick touchdown, and breaks Vanderbilt's heart. Now, Missouri, on the other hand. Missouri fans, I hate to be like this, and I've said this before. If you watch me on the SG1 Sports YouTube channel, you know where I'm going. Missouri has no business being in the top 10. They're not a top 10 team. They're certainly not the 7th best team in college football. I could literally name 10 better teams right now, 6 of which are in the SEC alone. And in fact, Missouri might be the 7th or 8th best team in the SEC. I don't know if Missouri can beat any team other than Mississippi State and maybe Florida without their head coach by 21 points. I love Vanderbilt in the value here. I would even alt bet this. I think this is going to be a very close game, or closer than expected game. Vandy can run the football, okay? It's, Missouri's front 7 has played extremely well. They played really well against Boston College. I think they only gave up 50 yards rushing, especially against a dual threat QB. I hope this is a bounce back situation for Vanderbilt. At the same time, Missouri's overrated. It's kind of unfortunate for me to say that, but it's kind of a wait and see when they lose and then point and laugh type of situation. I think they are going to lose here in a couple weeks at Texas A&M. But anyways, for Vandy game, I think Vanderbilt is able to limit the possessions here, maybe move the football a little bit more with Pieva in that rush game. And I think Missouri ends up winning this game maybe 30-17 or something weird like that. But I love the cover for Vanderbilt. But I will take the Missouri Tigers, who aren't a top 10 team.
Yeah, I'm not big on Missouri just like you, but I'm a little bit nicer. I do think they're a decent team. I had them at 8-4 at the beginning of the season. I stick by that from what I've seen. I will say the secondary does concern me for Missouri a little bit, but the thing is, I don't know if Diego Pavia can dice them up through the air. Thomas Castellanos for Boston College had over 300 yards passing versus Missouri, so he did a good job. They need to get Luther Burden more involved. Right now, he's not the leading receiver on Missouri. I don't understand that. I know Theo Weiss is a good player, but Luther Burden is probably the best wide receiver in college football. There's a couple other names you can debate there, but he's in the conversation at least. I made fun of this guy for Vanderbilt. Eli Stowers, the tight end that was converted quarterback. He's their leading receiver. He's been playing pretty well. But I just think Vanderbilt is just too limited offensively to exploit the secondary weaknesses. I think toughness and grit of Diego Pavia can only get you so far. I just don't believe in Vanderbilt. I haven't from the beginning of the year. I'm not going to believe in them. I think they beat a very overrated Virginia Tech team at the beginning of the year. That last year Virginia Tech skated by and won a lot of close games at the end versus a lot of bad teams, and people thought they were going to be good for some reason. So I think they're riding high off of that still. I'm going to take Missouri to cover this. I'm going to have Missouri winning this game. 38-10. I think they win this game rather easily. I think they cover the spread. I think Missouri offensively is able to put up enough points. I think they're able to stop the run of Vandy, and I don't think, like I said, Vanderbilt is explosive enough through the air to challenge those weaknesses of Missouri.
Well, I will say this about the Missouri-Boston College game. You can point at 3 different situations in which Missouri had blown coverages for whatever reason. The missed assignments there kind of gifted Boston College points. And then Luther Burden had a freak out, weird 2-play stretch where he costed Missouri 30 yards. They're up 27-14. They're driving the football. And then that weird 2nd and 59. Well, 30 yards of it were on Luther Burden. That kind of cost Missouri at least 3 points. So maybe I'm being a little bit too critical because Missouri should have probably covered against Boston College, but I kind of figured they wouldn't. I'm 3-0 on Missouri games. I'm about to make it 4-0 when Vandy covers the 21. And this game, I believe, started at 22.5. I thought, or it was something, it may have been 21.5, so maybe I'm being a little bit too critical, but I feel like this line has actually dropped a little bit. Maybe 23.5.
The over is 53.5 here, so I would go under on that as well because 38-10, that'd be 48 points. What did you say the score was for you, Tyler?
I went 30-17. I think Vandy will force some field goals. And I will say this, I think the Vandy-Virginia Tech game was kind of a fluke, and I think Virginia Tech is still going to make their way through the ACC. But then they lose to Georgia State, so I guess it counterbalanced itself there.
Yeah, that's true. So we both have the under there. We're just on opposite sides. I got Missouri covering, and you have Vanderbilt plus 21. And I took Boston College, so I'm glad Missouri made those mistakes because I made a little bit of money off of that. Now, let's get into the game of the week in college football, in my opinion. Tennessee is favored on the road in Oklahoma's first SEC game ever. They played a couple years ago. When Baker Mayfield was the quarterback, Oklahoma somehow pulled that off. Tennessee, like I said, favored by 7. The over-under here is set at 57.5. Tyler, what do you have for us in this game?
Well, Oklahoma has pretty much dominated Tennessee over the past how many years? Because you got to go back to last time they played. What was that? 2016. I think it was actually 15. They beat them 31-24 in overtime in a situation. Tennessee dominated that entire game. Josh Dobbs made some critical errors in that late game. Butch Jones as well. And then the year before that, Oklahoma beat them by 30. And I believe, didn't they play? They may have played in the thousands as well, where Oklahoma beat them kind of considerably. I think in the early 2000s or something like that. But Oklahoma's kind of been that much better than Tennessee over the past couple, 20 years. Until these past 2 seasons in which Tennessee is finally back. They're able to run the football. Here's the key to this game. If Tennessee is able to run the football in Oklahoma, which is going to be tough because Oklahoma has a really good defense. Probably you could give Brent Venables a lot of credit for what he's done at Oklahoma, kind of flipped them to more of a defensive team. But Tennessee's offense is kind of gimmicky, no offense. And if they can't run the football, the chances of winning is limited. However, Jackson Arnold has not been good. He has been very, very bad for Oklahoma. If you look at the game that they scored 51 points against Temple, they were held under 400 yards against a very bad Temple team. They had 6 turnovers created defensively. Jackson Arnold played okay. Then the Houston game, what in the heck happened there? Jackson Arnold played terrible. He didn't look good last week in the second half against Tulane. Threw a terrible interception to their middle linebacker. It's just a crazy situation. I love Tennessee, though. I think Tennessee's a legitimate top 10 team, maybe even better. I think Tennessee's actually going to be able to throw the football a little bit more. With Brew McCoy, he might actually be the key on the outside there. I think this is a lower scoring game, but I love the Vols. I think they're going to come on the road and stomp on Oklahoma. I think it's going to be a 27-10 type deal game here where Tennessee just beats Oklahoma on the line of scrimmage. And that's kind of what Tennessee has to do if they want to be a national championship style team. It's going to be a tough task going into Norman, but I love Tennessee. I'm actually betting on that 7. I love that 7. If I were to bet, I would bet on the 7 points here. I think Tennessee is just that much better than Oklahoma to go on the road in Norman, and Nico will have his best game of the season. I don't think he's going to be lighting up the world, but we saw that against NC State where he threw 2 kind of boneheaded interceptions. If he does that in this game, Oklahoma has a great shot at winning. I am not a big fan of Arnold. I don't think he's a good quarterback. I think he's actually one of the worst in the SEC. I like the Vols to win in a lower scoring game, 27-10 on the road.
Yeah, we're going to agree completely on this game. And I know people say, well, you're biased. You're a Texas fan. Yes, I do hate Oklahoma. But if I thought Oklahoma was going to win this game, guess what I like to be, guys? I like to be right. I do not think they're going to win this game. I don't think right now their offense is just completely lost. They're bringing in a whole new offensive line from last year. And they have a guy out already from that. And then you have all these wide receivers missing, Nick Anderson, Jaden Gibson. I don't know if Nick Anderson's playing in this game. They definitely need him if he is going to play. Deion Burks is the only wide receiver at Oklahoma currently that is 100 yards receiving. That's not going to get it done in a game like this. Also, we talk about Ethan Garbers leading UCLA in rushing. Jackson Arnold is leading Oklahoma in rushing. That is bad, abysmal, terrible, whatever you want to call it. It's not good. Javonte Barnes is going to have to step up in this game for them to have a chance. The Oklahoma offensive line is going to have to play well above the way they played so far if they have a chance, because let me tell you, James Pierce only has 1 or 2 tackles on the year. If they don't play well, this is the type of game that NFL scouts will point to and say, damn, you remember when he had 3 to 4 sacks versus Oklahoma? Because that's what this could be, guys. This could be a race to the quarterback for those Tennessee edges, especially James Pierce. Jackson Arnold is mobile, but the thing is, he will throw you the football. Tennessee just has to catch it when he does. And that's going to be very interesting to see if he's got, to me, Oklahoma has a very narrow road to win this football game. They cannot turn the ball over, and they have to be physical at the point of attack on the offensive side of the ball with their offensive line versus the Tennessee defensive line. If they are not able to do that, this game's going to be very ugly. This kind of reminds me, I don't think it'll get this bad, but Michigan and Texas, because Michigan was so limited offensively, Oklahoma's they're not that bad, but they're in that realm of they don't really have that many weapons right now on the offensive side of the ball, and I don't know who's going to step up. Maybe Deion Burks does explode and have a really good game here, but I just don't see it. Tennessee's the only team in the country. I know they have a weak schedule, but they're the only team in the country and top 3 in points per game on offense and points per game on defense. I expect Tennessee to win this game pretty easily. I think it's close for a half, and then I think Tennessee just beats them up in the second half. I have Tennessee winning this game 37-17. I'm taking a blowout here. I think Tennessee is a top 5 team in the country. I think Oklahoma is somewhere in between right now, probably the 20 to 30 range, honestly. So I'm taking Tennessee -7. I'm taking the, what would I said, 27. What did I say? 27.
You said 37-17?
37-17. Thank you. So I would take the under. It's 57.5. So that's 54 points. What was your score?
I had 27-10. That's only 37.
Okay, yeah. So
37.
You're way under. So
Yeah.
we both take the under here, and we both take Tennessee. So we agree on that. So really, the only game we just completely disagree on is Florida Mississippi State. Everything else we line up on somewhere, the over under or the point total or the spread. I mean, there are some super chats here. So Tony Montana, thank you for the $2 donation. Shout out Ad Rooster. He's learning.
He's a interesting character. He's a Michigan fan, by the way, in our group chat there. Woohoo! What's up, Ad Rooster? I may say his name wrong. They say it's I don't know. I thought it's Ad Rooster. Is it A Drewster?
I don't know.
Care, but
I think whatever you guys want to call him. I don't know. So
he's a smart aleck Michigan fan. Oh.
That most of them are. Andrew Smith, thank you for the $5. Don't underestimate Diego Pavia, traumatized Auburn fan. I mean, yeah, he's a good player, but I just don't. He's going to have to do it all versus Missouri, and I think Missouri has a much better defense than Auburn did last year. So
he's saying that because
New Mexico State.
Yeah, New Mexico State when they blew them out. And there's like 5 or 6 New Mexico State players on Vanderbilt's roster, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, Jerry Kill's there too. I didn't know that until they showed him on the sideline. Yeah.
Weird.
Falls by at least 14. Tony Montana saying Oklahoma wins.
Come on, Tony. We as SEC fans, we kind of have to humble at least one of the two, Oklahoma and Texas. Oklahoma's more vulnerable. They should be at least 2-1 right now. They kind of got bailed out in a situation in which Tulane
that safety
that too. They had, I guess, did they have that safety? But Tulane kind of Oh, yeah, the Houston, that was not a safety. But anyways, the
No.
Tulane situation, they kind of got in their own way. Same with Houston. If Oklahoma played a better non-con team, they probably would be 2-1 right now. Like, let's say they played maybe USC, they would definitely lose to USC, but maybe they would lose to Wisconsin. I don't know. To be honest with you, in my opinion, I don't think Oklahoma's a top 25 team. I wouldn't even have them in the top 30. They have an issue on their offensive side, and Sawchuk was extremely overrated coming into this season. And is he battling an injury? I think he is for Oklahoma. They can't really run the football because, Jackson Arnold can't throw. And when you can't run, you can't throw as well, especially with that type of offense. So I'm worried about Oklahoma in the SEC, and I think Tennessee is going to lay it down on them. Now, I was kind of conservative with my score total because I think Nico's going to make some mistakes, but it could get like the NC State game. And Tennessee hasn't given up an offensive touchdown, I don't think, all year. So
No, they haven't. They're only allowing 5 points a game.
yeah, and Nico, against NC State, he threw 2 interceptions. That one was pick 6, the other one cost him 3 points, but he did get blown up, got destroyed at the line. So maybe you can give him a little leeway there, but he's also in his first year. I'm not trying to hate on Nico, by the way.
No,
I think
I
he's
understand.
really good.
Yeah, he's still learning. I mean, you can see that. But that's the thing, too. Like, Jackson Arnold's still learning, and you see what he looks like compared to Nico. So, night and day there. And I think I will say this. I like Jeff Lebby's up-tempo style because that does work. That killed Texas last year. They were exhausted when they played Oklahoma, and that caused us to lose at the end of the game, in my opinion. And I think Seth Luttrell coming over from North Texas, I think you're going to have to start going more up-tempo. I know that kind of seems counterproductive, but I think it would at least catch teams off guard because right now what you're doing is not working. It's just not working. You don't have the talent right now because of the injuries, and then you don't have the blocking up front with the offensive line. Maybe if you can tire out the defense on the other side, that can work a little bit.
Yeah, you're going to have to get Jackson Arnold out of the pocket, if we're being honest here. He is not a good pocket passer, and he kind of folds under pressure as well. In fact, him under pressure is actually one of the worst, I think, in the SEC. If you look based upon his pressure ranking, they showed a graphic on ESPN before that pick 6. Literally, the second before that pick 6, he was like 6 of 19 in the 19 pressure situations for 106 yards, a TD, and an interception. So he makes a good play or he makes a devastating play. And then he threw that pick 6, which is hilarious timing right there by ESPN. But you're going to have to get him outside of the pocket. You're going to have to be able to run the football. And Tennessee's rush defense, really even last year, has been very consistently good. So I think this is an easy Tennessee pick. And I'm not high on Oklahoma either. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I don't really think if Tennessee does blow out Oklahoma, I think it says way more about Oklahoma than it does about Tennessee, honestly, because you and I agree. I'm actually a little bit nicer on Oklahoma. I said 20 to 30. You have them outside the top 30. So they're just and Brett Venables, man, you put yourself on the hot seat by doing this because you kicked out Dylan Gabriel, who you knew was a good player.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a big Dylan Gabriel fan, but you knew what he was. He was a solid B overall quarterback, and you were hoping to get an A at quarterback for Jackson Arnold. And right now you're looking at probably a C-. So that could have cost him his job there at Oklahoma. We'll see.
I mean, I forgot to say that about Dylan Gabriel. You mean to tell me you get rid of Dylan Gabriel and you're going to, see similar, if not better, performances from Jackson Arnold? Dylan Gabriel's the most consistent quarterback in college football. You saw what he did 6 years ago, or I think it was 5 or 6 years ago at UCF. He has he might actually have 17,000 yards passing in his career already. He's probably going to break 20,000 this year. He's one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and he gets the most crap for it, and I don't really understand it. He's the most consistent quarterback in college football. Look what he did, like I said, at UCF and Oklahoma. Just crazy to me that you kick him out for Jackson Arnold. I get it. He has the 5-star talent, but still, if I'm an Oklahoma fan, I would have much rather have him sit another year and let Dylan Gabriel cook, because if this Oklahoma team had Dylan Gabriel, they probably would be top 10 for sure, in my opinion. They're a quarterback away from being a 9 or 10 win team this year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how that comes back to either haunt him or help him. We'll see. If we're wrong, it could help him. If we're right, it will haunt him, and it could cost him his job at Oklahoma. But it's going to be interesting. That does it for the first episode, number 1 here on SEC Live. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm Matthew. That is Tyler. We will be back next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time to talk about the week's previous games, breaking down the latest news, and also previewing the week's upcoming games, including that big one down in Tuscaloosa between Georgia and Alabama. We will look at your comments here real quick before we leave, but then we will head out of here. If only we had A. Drewster here to calculate it.
I don't see it. We're so behind on the chat that we're just like speculating nonsense, I guess. I don't know.
3-1. Tony Montana, 3-1. Keep Dylan Gabriel out of your mouth. Tony Montana, I'll be here every week. Well, we appreciate it. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out what we're trying to build here.
Again, yeah, shout out Tony. He was the first super chat ever.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
God. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, thank you for your super chat. Andrew Smith, thank you as well for your super chat. Went through the top 5 teams. We broke that down. If you guys want to go check that out, go back to the beginning of the video. Thank you guys for being here. Again, hit the like button, subscribe. We will be back next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you guys.